This is Steffen Schmidt for InsiderIowa.com. We have been watching the situation unfolding in Libya over several weeks now, and I think what's interesting is that I myself, when I look at it, don't see any systematic results from the effort to try and either unseat Muammar Gaddafi or build up the opposition forces so that they can do it eventually or fairly quickly. I mean, to me it looks like an amateur operation. Yes, we destroyed a lot of property. Yes, the Europeans are flying around shooting at things, but it just doesn't look like it has been planned and executed in a way that will maximize the rapid resolution of the problem. Instead, it looks to me like a piecemeal, sort of timid thing, the kind of thing that Jimmy Carter might have done. And the results are that Muammar Gaddafi has had way too much time to redefine strategy. His military has been able to change their modus operandi, which is never a good thing to allow your enemy to do. I just got through reading a book about military surprises, and probably number one in that book was the suggestion that you do not want you want to surprise your opponent and try to accomplish your strategic objectives as quickly as you can. You do not want them to be able to concoct surprises that will then require you to redefine your battle plan. And I think, you know, Gaddafi's forces now are not driving around in military vehicles, easy to pick them off on the highways and so on. They're infusing themselves with the population. They're making it hard for NATO to use air power, which is the only thing apparently that is going to be used without causing a lot of civilian casualties and collateral damage, which will not be supported by public opinion in Europe for very long. I think the Europeans have never been very keen on the use of military force to begin with, and if a lot of civilians start getting killed, they're going to pull the plug on it. And so I don't understand what the, let's call it the ramping up to this operation was. I will be very interested to read eventually, when it becomes declassified, the documentation on what the thinking was in the White House, what the thinking was in the State Department and the Defense Department, and sort of what the total scenario looked like, and how what the end result was supposed to be, which I think was really to remove Gaddafi from power. Of course, it's still unfolding, and so it's too early to reach conclusions, but one of the questions, again, that you are always asking me, I get emails from you and you just won't leave me alone on this, is what is this going to do in terms of politics in 2012? Is Obama going to benefit from it? Is Obama going to be seriously harmed by this? And I will say the following. Number one, it depends almost entirely on what the end results are, what Libya looks like on election night 2012. I mean, the whole point is that we cannot have you know, another failed American military operation with a lot of expenses and with the objective of those military operations unfulfilled. Gaddafi still in power. If he survives this, probably his power will be enhanced. He will be better prepared. He will be able to rally around himself a strong group of people who have a stake in what he's doing, and the coalition will fall apart very quickly. If that happens, I have a feeling that Obama is going to pay a fairly heavy price for it. Americans just don't like the United States to get itself entangled in places and use what would be called minimal amount of force. Again, I don't want to make a comparison exactly, because nothing in history, and certainly no political and military operation ever is the same as the last one. But it just reminds me too much of Jimmy Carter when he decided to conduct a military operation to free the American hostages being held at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, in Iran. You'll remember that Jimmy Carter was reluctant to go in. When we did send a military operation there, it was the minimal number of aircraft and soldiers necessary to carry it out. And then when there was an accident in the desert launching area, the operation had to be aborted because it couldn't be completed with the remaining number of troops. And I thought that that was a disaster and a shame. And Jimmy Carter, I think, paid very heavily for the Iranian hostage crisis, but also for the sort of appearing to be weak in the using military force, which occasionally has to be used. The other thing I wanted to mention is that liberals and progressives and Democrats have not been very supportive of this military operation. I mean, the American public in general sort of generally supports it, but it's not an overwhelming enthusiastic support. And Obama has never explained why this was necessary, and I've mentioned this before, why it's more necessary to do this than some of the other places in the world where human rights are being abused and people are dying, and we're not engaging militarily there. And so I've talked to some liberal Democrats recently, and I'm in fact going to have a wonderful get-together with my sidekick Arnie Arneson from New Hampshire, and she is a liberal Democrat and is extremely disappointed in President Obama for a whole number of reasons, but using military force in Libya is certainly one of those. And if a lot of Democrats feel that way, and this operation is still muddled, and Gaddafi is still in Tripoli, and things have not been resolved by the time election night comes around, or election day, I have a feeling that a lot of people who would normally support President Obama, they're not going to vote for Michelle Bachmann or Donald Trump or Governor Pawlenty or whoever gets the Newt Gingrich or whoever gets the nomination of the Republican Party, but they may not get themselves out of bed, dressed, showered, dressed, and go down to the polling place and vote. Because the enthusiasm level on the part of progressives and Democrats for President Obama is not very strong. And I've heard people say, and I want to add this here as a kind of side discussion to the issue of Libya, which is, I guess, my main commentary here, that a lot of Democrats are saying maybe it would be almost better to have a really conservative Republican in the White House, which would re-rally the Democrats and fortify the enthusiasm by Democrats and would undermine the Republicans again. Because you remember that George W. Bush, even though he got elected and re-elected, basically in 2008 had extremely low approval ratings. And one reason President Obama got elected is because people were tired of the Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld policies and wanted something fresh and new. And it may be that, though it seems contrarian, that will happen again this time to the Democrats. It's much too early to tell, but I just wanted to tell you that there's a certain dynamic to issues like foreign policy, the budget deficits, which I've discussed in another commentary for InsiderIowa.com, which is where you're watching this. Thanks a lot.